Welcome to the Alain Elkann interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
Today we're Marco Delogu, who is the president of Palazzo Esposizione in Rome. At the moment there is a great exhibition of the Quadriennale, and we are here for another reason today, that Marco Delogu, a great museum cultural figure. As you know, he was the director of the Institute of Culture in London. Now he is the president here. But he is a very renowned photographer. And he just published a very special book, a very unique book called Marco Delogu, Antonello da Messina. This is not an easy challenge, Marco. Can you tell us how did this wonderful project came to your mind?
I hope it's not a challenge at all. It's just because if not, I would be completely crazy, referring to one of the best artists of all over the time. In 2006, there was a fantastic exhibition of Antonello da Messina at Scuderia del Quirinale. And Antonello painted just 35 pieces of art, 35 oil on wood, oil on canvas. And there were almost everyone was there. And now there is one in attribution that is part at National Gallery in London. That probably is Antonello. The process is still on. And I went to see this exhibition and I was completely with Stendhal syndrome. I was completely mad. I almost lost my identity. I'm not an art historian, but of course, I studied in the Italian high school, the Lyceum, and I studied Antonello, but just, let's say, briefly. But Antonello was in my mind. So I photographed 4 paintings, starting from the Annunciata, this one.
How did you photograph them? In a very special process?
Exactly. I photographed in a very special process with my big camera, my view camera, and having just a portion, sometimes a big portion or a smaller portion. The most important case is always the Annunciata, because the Annunciata is without the book and without the hands. I was focusing on the face, and my focus was very, very little, let's say. I was focusing on her eye and not on the rest of the things. So I put these pictures, I print these 4 portraits of Antonello, these 4 photographs on paintings of Antonello, and I put it in my studio. Sometimes I needed the time to go back and see these photos, but recently I decided that Antonello is my big maestro, let's say, and I wanted to do something.
But he is your big maestro because, you did beautiful photographs of Rome at the Villa Medici and other photographs of landscape, but you are maybe a specialist of the portrait, right? You have photographed the most important artists, writers over the years, So as Antonello is a great portraitist himself, maybe that's what has touched you. And what is very interesting is that the difference between a painting, an old master, like you just said, the Madonna who is Annunciata, who is in Palermo normally at the Museum of Batellis, and a photograph. And it was very brave of you to do what you did. Can you tell me what you did? Am I right that the portrait to portrait, this idea?
You are completely right. Getting to sleep, I was thinking about Antonello, and I was thinking, let's say, quite easy. I'm so close to a painter like Antonello, and I'm so far to another great painter like Caravaggio. These soft portraits, soft in a way that they are very deep, and the light is like that, and the way they see you, they look at you is so intense. The idea was always very close to me. I remember going to Palermo to see L'Annunciata, and I remember, that it was fascinating, but I didn't know what to do. So one point I decided that I wanted to put in dialogue with pictures that I did at least 10 years before. So, and because me, you, David, and Alain, we live in this border between one millennium and another millennium. The idea was I photographed Antonello in 2006, and I worked on Antonello in 2006, and I wanted to do in dialogue with images made before the year 2000. So it was not an exercise, let's say a silly exercise, but it's some things that it means why Antonello is so close to me. And so why it was in my mind before I photographed. And vi farà anche silenzio il più possibile.
So let's start with the painting you just mentioned, the Annunciata, the Madonna. What is the picture you choose to put together with her?
Well, finally, I chose one of the iconical picture I took, and it's a gypsy woman that is in a camp next to Rome, and that I went there just because I wanted to do some pictures, and finally I saw this woman just by chance. I usually set up my pictures, but this was completely by chance. I was taking a picture that is the last one in my book, and then his partner said that there was his wife, let's say, who was in his sort of house. I mean, a sort of a abandoned house. So I was back sun, the sun was in front of me. I didn't see anything. And finally, I saw this apparition, let's say. There was Senada feeding his second son named Jonathan. So I said immediately, may I take a picture? And she said yes. And with my big camera in a gypsy camp, imagine the difficulties, very hot. I took this picture that is a little bit moved, how can I say? But it's so fantastic, the idea of this gaze.
He and the Madonna have the same mouth, more or less.
Has the same mouth, as completely different, but the same power of the gaze. So I didn't want to do stupid thing like asking a beautiful model to pose like the Annunciata of Antonello. I was keeping my identity, but, of course, is referring to Antonello's work. And this is what I think it's, okay, going back to what Alain said before, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I have to do in total freedom.
When we go on, I mean, one picture you took, which is quite extraordinary, that you took his face very nearby, and therefore we understand better his personality, his person. It was Cardinal Ratzinger at the time, who then became Pope Benedict XVI. You took this incredible picture and you describe it, because the book has also a literature. I mean, each photo, you explain how it happened, each photograph, and he's next to a crying Christ portrait. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, there are no geometry, but, of course, it happened to me to spend half an hour in a big room with Cardinal Ratzinger, 1998. And I was a little bit afraid because he already had such a big personality. And so I made a picture quite far away, and then little by little asked if I could go closer.
He was sitting on a kind of a throne.
Exactly.
Exactly.
In this incredible empty big room in the Vatican. So it was a kind of a prophecy because he was sitting in a kind of a throne. And then I arrived very close with my problematic camera, that is a 4x5 view camera. And finally, I got this gaze. And this gaze for me by Ratzinger was incredible good.
What is interesting is the fact that you said that the Cardinal was very calm. And he said, I have all the time you want, right, for this picture. So how was the relationship with him? This very interesting Pope who then became Pope and then he renounced to be Pope. And I mean, it's a very interesting character.
Well, the relation was very relaxed. At the beginning, I was a little bit anxious. I'm never anxious when I'm next to important people. I photograph, I don't know, Mikhail Gorbachev was another big, powerful person in the history of the last century. And then he goes always, always better. When he was Pope, I had a lunch with Ratzinger, a common lunch, not just me and him together. And then I had another occasion to photograph him. At one point, his bodyguard was very nervous and he pushed me and my camera destroyed. And there were battery who were going down in the floor. And I remember Joseph Ratzinger, already Pope, getting this battery, giving me back. So an extremely scene also because it was always so elegant with this kind of red shoes and with his secretary, Father George, who was the most beautiful man in the world. And so it was this scene. So I always had the few times, just 3 times in my life, a good relationship. But except for the gossip, there was an incredible atmosphere, no many words. He was talking about him, he was talking about his brother, he was talking about Germany, and he was talking about the doctrine of the faith. And
that when you were taking the photo?
Yes, because it took 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
Why did you put it next to the crying?
There is no geometry at all next to each other, but there are figures and there are just these eyes who lead the photos. If you want to get into these 2 pictures, you have to enter and then to get out from these eyes.
The eyes of the Pope.
Yes, and then Christ's suffering was...
After that, there is something very, very interesting. There is a painting by Antonello that I think is in the Cefalù, exactly, which is a city not very far from Palermo. A weird man who is a sailor, unknown sailor. I mean, he's not a famous person. He's an unknown sailor with very, very ironical eyes. I don't know if they're mean, but I mean, this is a really strong portrait. And what do you do? Who do you put next to him? Someone who is in jail?
Well, I put someone who was in jail because he died, and it was the most important in terms of years of condanna.
He had the biggest pain.
Yeah, the biggest pain in Europe, because he was someone who killed someone directly. Unfortunately, a friend of my father, Vittorio Corcio, the judge. Then he put a bomb in the train between Florence and Bologna, the Strage Italicus. Then he killed 3 people in jail. So
he was a monster.
Yeah, and then he was the founder of Ordine Nuovo, the horrible, fascist, extreme right organization who wanted to do everything Mussolini wasn't able to do it in a way.
You went to see him in jail?
I went to see him in jail together. I entered in jail together with a common friend with Alain, that is Edoardo Albinati. And I said,
that's right.
Yeah, who wrote something also. And then I said, I don't want to meet Concutelli.
Concutelli is the name of this criminal.
Yeah, Pierluigi Concutelli. But then at one point I was locked in a room together with Concutelli, who had a very, very big voice. And because I was going in jail for some days, for many days, he recognized me and he said, I know you know the son of Occorsio. Why don't you tell him that? And I wrote this in my little notes on the photos. And I don't know who gave me the courage to say, no, I'm not going to ask anything to this guy because you killed his father. And he said, I killed his father as a member of the state. I said, you killed his father. Stop.
And you were not afraid that he would kill you?
Well, in a way, I was afraid.
You were
but
afraid.
Probably not. I don't remember. Thank God after 30 minutes, the police opened the door again.
2 of you together in the same...
Yeah, because there was a kind of revolt and he was allowed to go in this computer room. Then finally, I arrived with someone else and he said that I have to meet Concutelli. I didn't want, but he just burned his beer. He had a long beer, and the picture you could see I have a very short beer with a sort of a camping gas who exploded on his beer, and so the beer was burning. So he cut his beer. And,
in front of you?
In front of me. And with this camping gas, he was cooking pasta. He was recooking the pasta from the central from the central cucina. So I had this lunch, this prima linea terrorist from Turin, Pannizzari and Concutelli. And it was so strong that I said, okay, the last picture in jail, I want to take Concutelli. And finally, when I discovered again the pictures of Concutelli, I saw that there were something so close to this anonymous sailor. And these 2 lines, the gaze, the black. And so is a completely different diptych from the one of Ratzinger and Christ for many, many, many reasons. But it works in a graphic way much better. Probably
but
not.
He was consenting to take a picture?
Of course. In gel.
Was he respectful with you
yes.
As an artist? Or?
He probably wanted me to talk with Occorsio, but of course I never talked with Occorsio. Anyway, he was respectful. There was a big story about the revolt of the Asinara prison island in 1977 or 78, where the left terrorists didn't kill him and his companion, his comrade Tutti. And the deal was that they had to cook for them every time they meet her in other prisons. So Pannizzari was there, he saved Concutelli, and Pannizzari said, Pierluigi, you have to cook for me and for my friend.
So another picture is beautiful picture, a wounded Christ. This is a body picture. It's not exactly a portrait. And in the other hand, there is another prelate, another cardinal. You like cardinals, don't you? This cardinal is very, very old. What is his name?
His name is Paolo Dezza. He was
going. I mean, you took the picture just a few days before he died.
I didn't know that. And
this is a fantastic portrait of this man. Where did you take it?
I took them in a Casa Generalizia dei Gesuiti. The last floor is sort of a private hospital, let's say. It's a hospital for the high personality of the Jesuits. So he was there. I went there to see him. It was an incredible meeting. It took a lot of time because I didn't want to go away. And he was even laughing and everything. He was the professor of metaphysics of John Paul II.
How old was he when you took the picture?
90. He was 90 when I took the pictures, and he was nominated a few years before cardinal. So John Paul II appointed him cardinal, and he knew that he couldn't have any role because at the age of 75, the cardinals can't do anything. Even he couldn't vote in the conclave. But he was old, and so he told me so many stories, including the expedition of the North Pole by Umberto Nobile, who was made by the Archbishop of Milan. And one of the deal was that the Umberto Nobile has to put the flag of the Archbishop of Milan on the North Pole, but Umberto Nobile never arrived there. So all the pictures of this expedition were next to a room next to him. So he gave me the permit to go there and see all the pictures and reproduce the 27 pictures of the expedition in the North Pole or whatever it happens.
This happened 2 days before he died.
It happened 1 week before he died. And then he told me so many things about Pius XII and aristocratic guy who was called Padre Gumpel, who was the son of the second aristocratic German man who tried to attempt to the life of Hitler. And it was Pius, they say, the 12 took him in the Vatican and he changed his name, and he was always working as a Jesuit. And he was also the postulator, I mean, the one who has to write the Beatificazione di Pio XII. He died just a few months ago, a couple of years ago, probably. And I met him and I photographed him too.
What about the Christ?
I finished this. When I was leaving, I was very, very happy about the portrait, about everything. He said, "What are you going to do next week?" And I said, "Well, Eminence, I'm going to stay in my studio and work. Why don't you come to my funeral?" And I said, "What?" And I said, "Give your mobile telephone number." I just had my first mobile, honestly, in 98, because I was refusing to have mobile. But in 98, I had my first mobile, and I gave it to his assistant. And his assistant called me up just half an hour before the funeral. The funeral was made by John Paul II with about 30 diplomats from all over the world in a chapel in St. Peter. John Paul II made this speech in Latin. He was completely healed that day. Nobody could understand anything. It was very, very healed. But it was another scene of,
You took pictures?
No, I never took picture. I didn't took picture of the funeral, but I went to the funeral. And I put it with Christ on the three angel, because this idea of, pain, this idea of hands and the pain. And then I like Antonello for the portraits, but I also admire when Antonello opened his vision and there are landscape in the back, like for the other Annunciazione, or even San Girolamo in his studio that is in London, and other things like that. So I thought it was absolutely a great couple, but, for Antonello, not for me.
We finished the book. I mean, this book is incredible because you have images and narration, right? There are not many pictures. How many pictures there are?
11.
11 pictures. It's like a story. And here we have another character. I mean, I think this painting is in Syracuse.
Exactly.
And wasn't it stolen at a no?
I don't know if it was stolen
anyway,
or not.
What is it? The Annunciazione by Antonello, that is in Syracuse. And next to the painting, there are the two photographs. One, we talked before, of the gypsy camp. I mean, the husband of the woman that you put vis-a-vis La Madonna, I mean, L'Annunciata, who is holding the hand of a child. And you have this idea, this Cellinian vision in a way. And then on the other side, there is the writer Harry De Luca, who is in the middle of a very simple, with his hands together in this landscape. It'll be a Pasolinian landscape, we don't know where it is. And you put him next to the Annunciazione that in Syracuse. Why?
Let's start from the less important part of this triptych. Graphic works very well, but also in the Annunciata is the revolution of Annunciata is that it's Annunciazione without the angel. First time in the history of art. In these times, in this picture, in this painting, there is a big painting in Palazzo Bellomo in Ortigia, Syracuse. Antonello put the angel. So I needed two figures, and one is Harry with his hand that, also leads the tree, the hands, the face. It was, for me, emotionally and from the vision, it works so well with the angel. And there is a little bit of landscape, this landscape, and
it's not very focused. You like this
I always
kind of foggy
exactly.
landscapes. It's
I like a very sharp.
I mean, the person is relevant, you see it, and then the landscape is more.
Yes, and I didn't do these pictures in 2006. I didn't do these pictures at all. I asked someone else to do these pictures of the painting of Antonello with, certain rules that are my rules, the deep of field and everything. And there is the only pictures where there is a lot of landscape and other things. And I put next to the Madonna, the partner of the first My Madonna, that is the gypsy feeding the baby. And so it's like a circle. From here,
Harry De Lucas, out of all the writers you have.
When I met Harry again, we were friends when we were kids, but he is 10 years older. So we were friends with, a big difference, not very big friends. Then he went away from Africa and then working all over the world. When I met him again, he was translating the Bible, as you know. So I said, if I have to put a writer, I have to put someone who is working on the Bible. I saw some pictures that I took of Harry, and these pictures was working very well with this painting. And also I needed to do this painting because it was in the same room when I do the show for the first time in Palazzo Bellomo in Syracuse. And for me, it was an honor to do an exhibition next to Antonello. It was such a great, and this is a big 180 centimeter by 180 centimeter with a lot of problems, as you can see, but it's very, very powerful. And being in that room for 6-7 months was a real honor for me, was another inspiration.
So now that we have seen the picture and talked about the different, on each What is the meaning of this book? I mean, because obviously you're not a very pretentious person, therefore you don't pretend to be Antonello da Messina, the Antonello da Messina of today. It needs a certain courage to do a work like this, right? Because first of all, you're not an art historian, and then there is an interpretation of the art of Antonello in one way. And then there is this dialogue, which is impressive. This is new, right, for you? You never did something like that.
I never did something like that. It could be quite close, but not so much, to the head of the Romans, when I photograph a head of a Roman statues, mostly emperors or philosophers in the old Roma. And it's a problem with the unconscious. Where do I get the inspiration to do some photographs? Where do you get, Alain, inspiration to do your writing? My inspiration, I think, are more or less close to you in the way that I get inspiration from my life, getting to know Harry for many years, getting to know Ratzinger and Cardinal Dezza, David and his wife Senada, his partner. I don't know if they gypsy married or not, but there is something else. Is that the studies, the passion to go to see piece of art in a museum, the passion to study, the passion to have masters. You had.
You are a religious man?
No, but I'm making so many questions
mystical
about if I could be religion. I was born in a very Catholic family. When I was very young, finished with the Catholicism, and it became communist.
Your family?
My family, my father and my mother. But my uncle was an archbishop very close to Pope Paul VI. And I went to see him just a year before he was dying. And this is where all my interest to the cardinal began. But I'm talking with Don Matteo Zuppi, that you probably know very well.
The head of the Italian bishops organization, bishop of the Sant'Egidio community.
The cardinal and archbishop of yes. And so I said, I don't know what is going to happen to me, but I don't feel any religion. And I said, but I'm open. And he playing games with me, joking. He said, sometimes you try to go and look for religion, not just waiting and waiting. I don't know what is going to happen. But of course, the more I go old, let's say, the more I interrogate myself on why I did this life, why I'm doing this work, why I'm interested in even in power when I do, the president of big institution. Or the more I go on, the more I want to stay with myself and probably just doing works like that.
Because you want to be an artist.
Exactly.
Even if you are now in a position of, let's say, power in a way, in the city of Rome, because this big museum and others are part of the Roman museums.
Absolutely.
And you have been a very active and intelligent director of the Institute of Culture in London and so on and so forth. But ultimately, you don't want to be remembered as a director of the museum or president, but as...
Yes, honestly, I'm a photographer. Like Giorgio Bassani was vice president of the national TV, but he was a writer. We remember Bassani for his beautiful novels, for his beautiful romance. When I was in London, I gave funds to retranslate the old Bassani because it was the centennial. And everybody has to struggle in life. But this book is an artist book. It's not a book making a big number of copies. I wanted to do it because I really needed this idea that I want to say myself that what gave me emotion, what gave me even pain, but what is to be a photographer.
When did you decide to be a photographer? Because after all your friends are writers. Most of your friends are writers. And you also write quite well. Why did you decide to be a photographer? Did you start very young? Was it?
I started very young in 81 when I was 21 years old. And I started also with a very difficult work. It was the Year of Disabled People in America, USA. And it was incredible because there was a lot of people with problems coming from the Vietnam War. I was born in Rome from a Sardinian family, but I wanted to go to America. I went to England for 2 years, 78, 79, and 81, I wanted to go to America. The way I could pay myself to be in America for 4 months was to accept this idea to follow the relationship between the biggest university and disabled people, because it was the year of disabled people. And so I started that, and when I went back to Italy, I started to do a work on the psychiatrical hospital, because my father was involved in the famous Legge Basaglia of the opening of the asylum. And so I made 16 asylum all over the Italy to see 3 years after the law, what was the state of this psychiatrical hospital. So I started with two things quite tough. Then I had to understand what I wanted to do. If I wanted to do an historian, that was my university studies, or if I wanted to do a photographer. And honestly, I decided to be a photographer also because I wanted to do by my own. Before professor, you have to eat so many things. Student, and then assistant, and then more than assistant, and then little professor, and then professor. And this is why I'm going back to my freedom.
How did you become a president? Is it interesting for your work, or?
It's everything. It's interesting. It's a challenge, and sometimes it's quite difficult because I don't want to be in the middle of every decision. The bureaucratic decision. But being London, you were a great actor in London of my 4 years. You remember how many talks and even parties we did. But it was a different way to see a city. And for me, it was great. And London, in a way, changed my life, including that I had my son, I get married, and I met so many people. And I always remember our friend Joseph Rickwert. And so for me, being director of the Italian Cultural Institute was a great way to meet fantastic people. Joseph was at the top. When I went...
A picture of Joseph?
Yes, pictures that I didn't like it because there is a problem of distance in the pictures. I was so crazy for Joseph. Then I went to his house in Amsterdam, that you know very well, full of 45,000 books of the history of architecture and even other books, literature books, etc. And then I didn't keep the distance between me and Joseph. So when I did the pictures of Joseph, I was so close, not only physically, but also mentally. So the pictures, I didn't like it. With Joseph happened, the same thing happened with another Joseph, written in a different way, but always a great man. It was Joseph Brodsky, a poet. I spent 3 hours talking on top of the hill Gianiculum in Villa Aurelia with Joseph Brodsky,
which is the American Academy,
which is one of the two place of the American Academy, not this headquarters, but the residential part. And I was talking and I said, this is a gift. For 3 hours viewing Rome, I'm talking with Joseph Brodsky. And finally, when he said, but you came to make a portrait of me. And I said, yes, but 3 hours is much more than a portrait for me. Then I took a portrait that is a regular portrait, nothing extraordinary. And then, honestly, I said, I saw a beautiful portrait by Irving Penn of Joseph Brodsky. And I said, okay, that's the portrait. It's like someone else already did it. But I enjoyed so much these 3 hours. So I'm not that obsessive that I always have to take portraits. For me, for being a photographer is also a great chance, like Joseph Rickwert or,
to meet interesting people.
To meet interesting people. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And it's after your years in Rome and your travels and all that, your years in London, how is it to be in Rome? Is Rome, obviously Rome is Rome, among the most beautiful cities in the world. There is the Vatican. We are not here to describe the beauty of Rome, but is it an interesting city to work?
It's a very interesting city. It's quite difficult. It's not fast like many other cities, like you know very well, London or New York. It has less political problem right now than New York by the Trump administration, or after the Brexit. I was from 15 to 19 in London, and the Brexit was a disaster. But there is something that I really did immediately the first year, putting together the foreign academies of art, from the American to the French to all the others, and meet.
In Rome.
Rome is the only city in the world who have this network of academies. There are 34, with 6 very big, from the French to the German to the American, Spanish, British, the British School of Rome. And then there are other a little bit smaller, like Polish or Romanian or Scandinavian, etc. So this is something. And then also, I wanted to go back to Italy. And probably to go back to Italy, I wanted to be in Rome. I know it's not easy for many reasons, but there are still so many things and beautiful things to do, and so much beauty. And also, we have to stop saying that Rome was nothing for contemporary art or writing, because there are, the other day I discovered that Jonathan Safran Foer lives in Aventino next to my house, and Cy Twombly passed all of his life here, and many artists, many our, iconical.
The writer, artist who didn't like much to be in Rome was Joyce.
Oh.
He spent the winter here from Trieste. He went back to Trieste. But it's true. I mean, so many people came to Rome.
Well, there are other people who didn't like it, and I can understand that there's a part of chaotic and even problematic part, but there are so many things, and especially if you go to the secret Rome to see archivals of the state, archival of the city hall, archival of the Vaticans, you could, very well, you could miss. And even for cinema, it's an important city. For literature, is an important city. You know very well how many, from Morante to Moravia to youngest generation, how many thoughts were made in Rome. But, someone has to decide what to do.
I ask this because nowadays there's a lot of talking about the vitality of Milano and how Milano is becoming an very active city. So I just wanted to know if Rome, because in Rome there are so many huge thing, as you said, the academies, and then there are the Dominicans, and then there are the Jesuits, and then there is the Vatican, and then there's politics, and then there are United Nations. I mean, there are many embassies in Rome, right? So it's a different place. So it was interesting to know, you being in the center of the creativity here, doing shows, organizing things, if Rome is one of the lively cities in Italy, or...
Well, I think it's one of the lively cities in the world, with so many handicaps for other things. It's not a place where there are many companies who could support art. In a way, when somebody said Milan is vitality, I doubt about it, but also because there are entrepreneurs like Fondazione Prada or other big collectors who invest on art. This in Rome is not like that at all. But it's true that you have to make a balance between what you get from the state, what you get from the city hall in terms of museum. The oldest museum in the history of the world is the Museo Capitolino. And so you could have a lot of feedbacks, a lot of stories to tell and things like that. But you could be trapped because there is so much beauty that to be compared, to have a dialogue with that could be quite dangerous in a way, because you can never arrive to the beauty of, so many masterpieces that are here. But that you just escape if you said, I have to tell you what I'm seeing, what I'm living, etc., etc. And I think there is an international community in Rome that is very, very interesting, from very, very young people to old people.
Young people are interested in art?
For many things, yes. I suffering because I don't have so much time to study young photographers or young artists. But sometimes I just see something and I said, and is a young artist.
Now that you did this incredible project by Delogu, Antonello da Messina, who are you going to face now?
I probably want to finish.
You have another.
I want to finish Antonello da Messina doing the 3, 4, or 5 were in the National Galleries and one at the Prado, because many years ago I had a fellowship at the Pompidou Center in Paris. and I photographed Yannis Xenakis, the famous artist and composer. And there is a painting of Antonello da Prado who goes... Yes, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Exactly.
It was by chance. Somebody arrived at the Prado with a blanket and said,
"Here we are." And so I want to finish this. It's already finished, but I just want to go on and then be open to do... I was trapped in a way, doing series of portraits, writers, artists, inmates in the jail, contadini, farmers, jockeys of the Palio di Siena, etc., etc. Now I want to go just free and walk. And if I see someone, I want to take pictures of someone.
What is the aim of a photographer? Nowadays, everyone is a photographer because everyone has a telephone and a camera, and people take pictures all the time.
Well, I am completely sick about the numbers of images we have, but I'm not against the technology. I think the technology could be used also for great reason. I think we produce so many images that is just rubbish. But I have the need to do pictures. And last time, and I could a little bit cry right now, last time I saw a friend of mine who was called Michela Murgia, was an Italian writer. I saw by chance in a restaurant, I was by myself and she was by herself. She just arrived from Paris and we had a pasta together. And then she said, "Sorry, I have to go home. I feel very sick." And then I said, "No, stay." She said, "No, I feel sick. I have to go home." And then I gave her a hug, and she said, "Probably it's the last time we see each other," because she was going to die a few days after she knew that. And she said, "I'll tell you one thing. The pictures of your gypsy, you gave me a print, and this print is is in my bedroom. I say a prayer every night before I go to bed. Stop doing pictures. You already did this picture. It's enough."
The icon of your life.
Yes. And I think about this, not every day, thank God. But then in a way, I'm pleased to do pictures. I need to do pictures. And this is why I'm suffering when I have to spend so many days like this morning, in meetings and other things like that. But I'm happy that I did the Pasolini exhibition. We walked through together that, made per Paolo Pasolini a great homage, a great gift. And we show every book he made since 1942, when he made by himself Poesia Casassa. And then I made you for lunch quite close, and you told me when you went with Bassani to see Pasolini in the early 70s and with a convertible car. And then to add story like that, I don't know. I'm not so skilled, but probably, as in this book, I'd like to write few stories about meetings, and most of my meetings are made by being a photographer.
Thank you very much, Marco. I think it was very interesting.
Alain Elkann interviews.